On a visit we made to London a few years ago, I took the opportunity to go to early morning prayer at St Martin in the Field. As I walked to Trafalgar Square, it was fascinating to watch London come slowly to life. Soon the noise of the waking city was blocked out as the door of St Martin's closed behind me. Within these walls there was only peace and calm. I took my place in the choir stall. There were about 6 of us. However, the pews were not empty. There were many people sat there. In them sat people who'd come in out of the cold. Perhaps some had spent the night out on the streets. There were 2 boys who caught my eye, teenagers, cold and unspeaking, and clutching carrier bags. I sat and wondered what their story was. What had brought these 2 boys to this place on this morning, this really cold morning? I guessed that these boys, like countless people before them, had come because they knew that St Martin's in the Fields would never turn them away. After the First World War, Reverend Dick Shepherd had opened the crypt of St Martin's as a place that homeless soldiers could use. His vision was to have a church of the ever-open door. And today, Shepherd's vision has become a reality, for the church has, I believe, become the busiest homeless centre in the UK. Over the years, St Martin's has constantly changed to reflect the needs of society, but at the same time has retained its church services to reflect the rhythms and patterns of the church year. In my view, the church should be constantly changing and challenging, whilst at the same time remain unchanging and constant. Perhaps St Martin's is so successful because it has done just that. St Martin, after whom the church was named, was a Roman soldier who cut his cloak in half when he rode past a beggar at the city gates of Tours in France. Martin had no need to give his cloak to the beggar, and the church in London, which bears his name, has no need to provide for the homeless and lost of its city. But he did, and they do, and in so doing both respond to the parable of the Good Samaritan, which you can find in Luke chapter 10, beginning at verse 25. We're so familiar with the parable that we can easily forget just how hard-hitting the story really is. It was told to illustrate the 2 fundamental commandments of Christianity: love God and love your neighbour as yourself. So simple, and yet so very, very complex. A difficulty expressed so well by Snoopy, the dog in the Peanuts cartoon, when he says, "I love mankind, it's people that I can't stand." At the end of the parable, Jesus asks the lawyer this question: which of the 3 passers-by was a neighbour to the man who fell by the wayside? The lawyer answers correctly by saying, the one who showed him mercy. But his discomfort is very clear, for he cannot bring himself to say simply the Samaritan. This was challenging stuff for the lawyer, and I suggest it is still challenging stuff for us today in our world 2,000 years later. Most people at some time are good Samaritans. People give freely to their chosen charities and respond to different causes and appeals. We give in all manner of ways, with money and also with our time. During these difficult times in which we now find ourselves, we've seen the very, very best of people. We're witnesses to countless acts of kindness and love, some celebrated in the media, but others, hundreds of thousands of them each day, unsung and unknown, except by a few. Too many kindnesses to mention, so many working to help others in so many different ways. I believe that the challenge that Jesus sets in his parable goes much further than us as individuals. For I believe that the parable of the Good Samaritan reaches out towards the healing of nations, the coming together of disparate peoples. It is about true tolerance and love of people, not only individuals, but also as communities of countries and of nations. Whilst there is still war and enmity amongst people, whilst there is still prejudice and intolerance, whilst there is still selfishness and greed and suffering and inequality, then the traveller will still lie beaten and bleeding on the road. Perhaps when the world comes out of these difficult times, the traveller will be better cared for and treated with greater kindness than they were before. Which of the three do you think was the neighbour to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The lawyer said, the one who showed him mercy. Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. And now, that is the challenge to governments and to the people of all nations, simply to go and do likewise.